What is up, everybody? Welcome to AK Plays. I'm AK. Let's play. Okay is right, meme guy. Now, you guys might have been wondering what was that build, and that was a hybrid build, which is kind of going to be the purpose of today's video. Maybe it doesn't have the most insane damage, that it's only running with about 7,200 firearms, I believe. The screenshot's later in the video, and then I'll be sure for you. But, so it's not the craziest damage in the world, but it's very consistent, good damage with not relying on procs. And that's kind of what makes hybrid builds really good, is you don't have to worry about 6-piece bonuses, proccing this, proccing that. All you have to worry about is the standard items that you have to proc, which is going to be your critical saves, on the moves, adrenalines, combat medics, those type of things. But you don't have to really rely on your gear set for everything. Now, the background video, in case all of you are thinking to yourselves this isn't a hybrid build, you're right. The first, while I explain the purpose of hybrid builds and what they're doing in 1.8.3, I have a little bit of group gameplay Nomad with a couple of teammates that I picked up. I play with Green a lot, but the other guy we just found in the DZ and decided to fight off against some other manhunts, and then eventually we drop our manhunt ourselves, and we do go on to clear it. The clip ends with me just starting the run up to clear it, but basically, then after that, I will switch to hybrid clips, and I will tell you about a couple of the hybrid builds that I had a good success with. Now, hybrid builds in general haven't had a huge place in PvP in the DZ for a long while. 1.8 was the Rise of the Predator's Mark, and then 1.8.2 was the complete takeover of Striker, and everybody was running those builds during their periods of time that they were really taking over. Now, in 1.8.3, those builds are kind of pushed to the wayside. Striker's been completely obliterated and has no chance in the DZ. If you're still running Striker, more power to you, but I don't think it's good at all. And Predmark, as strong and annoying as that is, because it does have a place in the DZ now that immunizers have been nerfed, and a lot of people aren't going to be running that, so Pred has made a return. But at the same time, a lot of people were very optimistic in 1.8.3 that hybrid builds were going to make a re-emergence. And they really haven't. A lot of people are still trying to run them. You do see them quite often. I would say I run into probably 3 or 4 of them a day, which isn't crazy. I would say that's a pretty low percentage of people I run into. I'd say about 10% of people are running hybrid builds. Most other people are going to be running a gear set, whether that is Predator's Mark, Nomad, D3, a different variation of a healer build or a support build, being in Final Measure, Reclaimer, Tactician. I've actually seen a lot of Tactician sticky bombs and Tactician turrets, Tactician seekers even, and it's kind of weird. I don't really see those as hugely successful builds, but they're becoming a little more common. But in general, I would say that you're not seeing a ton of hybrid builds, at least not as many as people expected. I expected to see everyone running hybrid builds. I expected that to be the main DPS build in 1.8.3. However, I still think that Lone Star, Banshee, even full Alpha Bridge, I think are going to be better DPS builds. Predator's Mark obviously is still a very viable DPS build right now. I hate to call it that because, I don't know, it's just kind of a generally good build at everything. But either way, I would say that hybrids aren't as popular as I thought, and the reason for that, I think, is the non-native healing, because obviously Nomad gives you native healing, Predator's Mark gives you 9k stamina, D3 makes you a walking tank, and there's not a lot of other popular gear sets that are gonna give you non-native healing. I mean, everything else that's popular is gonna be either healer builds or support builds. Your main DPS builds are gonna need to be carried by healers. And so hybrid builds really don't have a huge spot in solo play, and believe me, I like hybrids, I love the idea of them, and I enjoy running them. However, when everybody else is running Nomads and they have extra lives and they have healing over time, and you run into a D3 and they're literally invincible to a hybrid build. I mean, I'm sure that there's some hybrid players that can kill D3s, but to me it's really tough, and it's not worth the effort of fighting a D3 when all of a sudden 5 other dudes have stacked up to shoot at you while you've been trying to kill the D3. So when you run into that, and you run into Predator's Mark, when you're running low stamina and probably not a whole lot of EDR, it's pretty tough to run a hybrid build against that kind of threat. You've got bleeds coming in, people with extra lives, giant shield players. It's pretty tough for a hybrid to fit in when you really don't have anything other than DPS and a little bit of stamina. This is the first hybrid that I saw great success with, which is a couple of pieces of Predator's Mark and a couple of pieces of Banshee. And I put some stability on the backpack, and I'm running an M4 with Vicious, I believe it's Vicious, Responsive, and Accurate, which allows me to beam, which is really, really powerful in this update because Striker's gone. So not a lot of players can beam, and so when you're shooting at long distances accurately, people really can't keep up. Now this clip isn't the greatest show of that because I'm mostly at close range, but it is still a very good build. Now, as I was mentioning earlier when I'm talking about hybrid builds, this one doesn't have any healing, and it really doesn't have a ton of stamina. It's basically firearms, and then hoping that I survive long enough to kill everybody I'm fighting. Obviously, if I use my medkits properly, I'm going to probably be fine, which you see there was a pretty decent medkit. I have some of the worst internet ever, but I just try to time my medkits as soon as they get in the last bar to try to get me some critical save. But either way, hybrid builds, because they don't have a ton of healing, are really tough to use when you're fighting other gear sets like I was talking about earlier. And yes, I know there are obviously hybrid builds that have tactician involved or a good amount of skill power involved, and they have great big heals. And yes, they exist. Yes, they work. I have a buddy who plays with a Hexo that has huge heals all the time, and he does really well with it. But it's just tough because when you're running low stamina and you're relying on heals like that, as soon as you're disrupted, which is very common in this meta, you don't have any means of healing yourself, and you have low stamina, and your damage isn't going to be as crazy as it would be if you were a firearms-focused hybrid. So hybrids are tough because you have to give up something, whether that's giving up your firearms, stamina, or your electronics. Now this is the next one that I had some success with. This is a few pieces of Alpha Bridge to complete the 4-piece Alpha Bridge, and a couple of Banshee pieces to give you that damage out of cover. I would say that this one isn't quite as successful. I ran it with an SMG, and I ran it with a little bit more firearms. But what I noticed is when you're running high firearms and you're running low stamina and no heals and no native healing on your gear set, like a build such as this, your big issue is going to be having to hit people and not get hit yourself. And when you're running an SMG, you need to be at really close range, which is going to make you a target. With the first hybrid that I showed, that Predator's Mark with some Banshee and the beaming, that has long distance AR range, which is really nice to run as a DPS hybrid because you don't need to worry about having a ton of people shoot at you or focus you because you're not directly in the fight. You're kind of out of sight, out of mind, as they say, which is very powerful, and that's why I like that first hybrid that I showed you a lot better than this one. This is a good hybrid, and it works pretty well. It allows me to unlock another weapon talent, which means this house gets to have its card counter, a responsive, vicious, and deadly, which allows it to do a lot of damage. So this was hitting high 20 crits, which is good, and it was a very solid build. The only issue was that it just had no stamina, which is the same on the other one, except this one's going to take a lot more fire. So regardless of your hybrid build, you should probably consider having a healer in your group, maybe even a support build like a D3. I think with a Reclaimer and a D3, hybrid builds are going to be awesome. You're going to have a lot of fun with it. The only thing that makes me kind of doubt hybrid builds is if I have the opportunity of having a Reclaimer healer and a D3 on my team, along with another DPSer, I feel like I'd rather put on my Lone Star. It's going to do more DPS. It's going to have about the same stamina. It's not going to have any native healing, just like a hybrid, except I'm going to be dealing out quite a bit more DPS, and I have the long range viability that I would on that AR beaming build. Because Lone Star, if you didn't know, my Lone Star has good stability and good accuracy, allowing it to shoot at long distances, which I feel like I'd do more DPS, and I would be able to take advantage of the healer and the support build a little better than the hybrids. So I feel like the hybrid, I know I'm going to get a little bit of flack for this, is a bit of a gimmick. It's not really a viable build, in my opinion, to go with straight hybrids. Maybe if you have a team supporting you, it'll be a little easier, but as a solo build, you have to give up something, and that's a fact. If someone can disprove that for me, I'd welcome you, but you have to either give up firearms, you have to give up stamina, or you have to give up electronics. If you run 5-5-5 across the board, you're just going to be jack of all trades, master of none, which essentially means you're going to be okay at everything, but not great at anything. And I'd rather have a build that specializes in one or two things and then lack something else, but it feels to me like you have to give up too much to run a hybrid. It's obviously they work well in one-on-ones, but if you're fighting groups of people or anything of that nature, it's just not gonna succeed. And that might be my opinion, it might be unpopular, but I tried out probably 13 different hybrid combinations, and these were a couple of my favorites, but it still just doesn't feel like they compete with the 6-piece bonuses on a couple of the popular gear sets in the 1.8.3 meta. Hopefully that'll change. I would love to see a little bit more hybrid action. They're really fun to use, and I think that they allow you to really showcase your skill. And a lot of the other builds kind of work as crutches, which I don't like to see as much. I'd rather see more hybrids because it requires a lot more player skill to use, in my opinion. So that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you agree, disagree, have any questions, throw them in the comments.